so they can go to the channel. And you know, you guys said that you liked it, so we're gonna do it again. These are the patch notes. This is Riot jerking themselves off, talking about what they do when they're jerking it, and then we go right into the patch notes. This is Xayah. Is that how it's said? Have you heard it pronounced yet? Is it Xayah? Xayah?
Dude, I have no idea. Also, your scene isn't showing the entire patch notes, just so you know. I don't know if
No, it is. It's showing what they can read it, basically. It's not showing the side shit.
I'm just making sure.
Yeah. No, that's intended. That's intended. I'm just trying to keep it clean. Xayah and Rakan, dude, or whatever the fuck. I tested these guys out on the PvE. Do you have PvE, Brandon?
No, I don't.
Well, you should get one. But anyways, YouTube, I didn't give a proper introduction. Hexadecimal was in the last patch notes. He's a very knowledgeable mid lane player. And he has some really good ideas, so we're bringing him along on these to bounce ideas off of him. So you're getting two perspectives from two high elo players. That can't hurt. And Xayah and Rakan or Rakan, or what the fuck, I don't even know. I tested these guys out on the PvE. My initial read on them, if you guys want, Brandon said he doesn't have PvE, so he hasn't been able to test them. But essentially, I feel that, Rakan is... Yes, Rakan is the support and Xayah is the ADC. I feel like the support's actually going to show up quite a bit once it's released, especially in higher elo. It's a really, really mobile support. Has a lot of cool ways to engage, a lot of cool ways to skirmish, and just seems like one of those classic Riot cases of overloaded kits where he can play super defensive if he wants, he can play super offensive if he wants. Seems like he maybe not snowball in the sense of like he can build full AP and go off. But he definitely seems like the type of champion that would serve well in a solo queue support environment in my experiences. Whereas with the ADC, Xayah, whatever the fuck, she's sort of immobile, and as a rule of thumb, I pretty much say unless they're overtuned, they're useless. So I can't see Xayah being too good until she gets just... Inevitably, Riot does this thing where they take a champion that's immobile and overtune him, and then he's broken, and then he's not. That's going to be the case with Xayah. So I'm not too impressed with the new ADC, but the support's going to be dope. So, anyways, moving on to Aatrox. Hellbent now refreshes when fighting monsters. Attack speed is up. Despite some over the patch, struggling with consistency. His new passive access to jungle, so we're tuning that. And then the heal. So this is essentially a buff to Aatrox. My initial thoughts are Aatrox has already been showing up in the top lane, and he's being played a bit more. I don't know. This is actually pretty interesting to me because I think that he is starting to become a bit more viable as a split pusher, and split push champs are pretty good right now. I don't know if this puts him over the edge, but I personally think that he's still kind of a weak champion on the whole, and I don't think he's going to be god tier, but he might pop up even more in solo queue. What do you think, Brandon?
Yeah, I think that basically in the jungle, if anyone plays Aatrox in the jungle, this buff where now it refreshes when fighting monsters is basically actually makes them strong in the jungle, or like, I shouldn't say strong, but you know what I mean. It actually makes them like somewhat viable in the jungle. I think that overall, just the way his kit is designed, he's never really going to be overtuned unless they just really mess up his numbers or something like that.
Yeah.
But the other thing as well with the new Hellbent refreshes on monsters is that could put in some situations where it could be a Scion thing. Maybe now people can do some sort of like, start at a camp and kite it back and then move back over and have 5 stacks. I don't know. Probably not. There's probably nothing like that. But like you said, for split pushing, it will definitely help with split push because now he can go to the enemy's camps while he's in enemy territory and will get his full attack speed buff, right? Yeah,
and the other thing that I wanted to point out with him is that there was a guy who was playing it the other day. It was in one of our sessions, and he was playing Aatrox, and he got camped early or something, and he got rolling. Seemed like it could be pretty strong if it's ahead, and I just think that in general, this is one of those things where if he does show up too in the jungle, so not only is he going to be good at split pushing still, and it's going to help him, but if he does show up in the jungle, I don't know if you remember this, But there was a time where Chinese LoL scene was playing Aatrox all the fucking time, and they would essentially just like clear the camp and then dive the top laner. They would like do a jungle clear, and then it would be like default dive, kind of similar to what you guys have been seeing in yesterday with the GP Lee Sin shit. It was very similar, or just like just a Lise or Lee or any of those champs that can really put the pressure on early. I'd be curious to see if he actually starts showing up and doing that, because with the revive passive, it's pretty nice. When you want to dive, because that just drops aggro. So I don't know. It could be cool. I don't think it's going to be broken or anything. So it looks like Amumu's true damage is down. Let's see. 15% of magic damage dealt calculated after that damage was reduced. 10% of magic damage dealt calculated before the damage was reduced by magic resist. I'm not quite sure I understand the numbers of this change. The function of Amumu's passive didn't match the expectations, so we're switching to the latter and adjusting the numbers. Passive now, true damage, passive numbers down. I'm kind of retarded. Brandon, does this make sense to you?
Yes, it does.
Okay, cool. So, thank God, because I'm dumb as fuck.
Okay, so all this was that beforehand, when they did the little Amumu change last patch.
Yeah.
They said 15% of magic damage dealt will be true damage, but it was actually doing 15% of the damage after resistances had been calculated. So that's not really true damage, because true damage ignores resistances. So that's basically what they're changing here. They're saying, hey, instead of it doing true, quote unquote, true damage, 15% true damage after it's been mitigated, now it does 10% of true damage before the calculation of the mitigation. Now the interesting thing is basically, well, since they reduced it by 5%, is that actually a nerf or not? I actually did the math on it, and the way it works out is...
You did the math on it? When?
Like five minutes ago. Come on, man. I'm trying to sound... I'm sounding all professional and shit. And then you're like, when did you do it? And I'm like, 5 minutes ago. It completely takes away...
I'm sorry to take the win from your sails. Now you did more research than me, brother. Go ahead.
All right. So yeah, so the way... The way it works out mathematically on this is that once you have 50 MR, it breaks even, and anything past 50 MR, it's a buff in the current iteration. But anything below 50 MR, it's actually a nerf. Wait, do I have that reversed? 15% of magic dealt calculated after the damage was reduced by... You got me thrown off, man.
No, you're good. And this is kind of... this is important, and it kind of shows, too, like, the audience. Like, sometimes when these changes come out, it's... trust me, there's nobody watching this being like, I fucking knew it right when I saw it. Like, there's no way. So, I just... this is kind of one of those things where... when I wish that on Riot's end, that we didn't have to do all the fucking research on what the hell they were trying to accomplish with this type of stuff. But yeah, this one kind of rocks my world. And apparently, even though Brandon did the math 5 minutes ago, which is an eternity in Brandon years, yeah, did you solve it? Did you solve your riddle?
Yeah. So basically, all you need to know is that it's a nerf in the early game. You'll do slightly less damage off your bonus in the early game, or to people who are sub around 50 MR, which, as you can imagine, I mean, this is very minor. We're talking about, like, for every 1,000 damage, we're talking about a difference of like 10 damage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we're talking very, very minor. But you know, people start with 30 MR. Ranged champions don't get MR per level. So against those champions, all of a sudden, this actually is a slight nerf, even though the intention was just kind of clarity. I think that was like their main intention.
Yeah.
And then once someone gets to around 100 MR, you know, more of the tanks and stuff like that, it's actually a buff to the tanks. So minor buff to damage he can do to tanks because of the passive, and minor nerf to the squishy people who are sub 50 MR. And then the W nerf is obviously just a random nerf. My thoughts overall on this was a little bit confused. I think most high elo players won't understand why they're nerfing Amumu a little bit. But maybe they know something we don't. Maybe they have numbers we don't have.
This is probably a targeted nerf to low elo, because what's happened is exactly what we predicted in the last patch. Basically, the pro players aren't running this, right? I don't think we've seen Amumu in any like professional setting, have we? I don't think so. I could be wrong. I think, see, because Riot does balance off of they do a low elo, they do a low elo balance, a high elo balance, which is like the upper tier of the ladder, and then they do a pro balance. So this could just be that Amumu's tearing up low elo right now, like more than usual. So they're doing kind of like like we're just gonna nerf something. Because truth be told, I don't think high elo players give a fuck about Amumu right now. All the junglers pretty much agree that Amumu's still kind of ass. This is the guy though that probably needs some nerfing. But this is not really a giant nerf. A single brush no longer blocks vision of epic monsters. Ivern's brush is already brimming with utility. Blah, blah, blah. Brush Maker. Dropping brush directly on top of an epic monster no longer hides it from enemy vision. You can still deny vision of an entire area by creating walls of brush, thereby denying vision of the monster. Do you play Ivern?
Yeah, I played Ivern.
I played him a little bit. This is definitely a nerf. However, do I think that this does really anything to Ivern in terms of his position as top tier jungler in solo queue right now? Absolutely not. I don't think this. I still think he's pretty much the god tier auto lock jungler, and I think that just removing some of his utility in a fucking in like epic monster land is not gonna really take him off of this like ultra late game. You can't break his shields with shields and redemption play style that Ivern's been showing up with. What do you think, dude?
Yeah, I think that overall this won't affect him at all in terms of his win rate or his pick rate, ban rate, all that kind of stuff. His viability still a top tier jungler, but I do like the change because he's the only jungler who can kind of do that to someone, and the way that ward placements get put down, there's no way for anyone to really have counterplay if he basically hides an epic monster, right? If he hides a dragon or hides a baron, because people can't put wards on top of the baron, people can't put wards on top of the dragon. It's just this weird, unique case of a jungler who, for some reason, can permanently deny vision and make it extremely difficult for someone to try and steal against him. So I like the change, but it's not good enough to deal with how broken he is right now.
Yeah, I still think he's broken. I do want to make a quick correction, though. You said you were like, I don't think it affects his win rate. I definitely disagree. I think his win rate will drop a little. But yeah, to any significant degree, no. Right?
Yeah,
that's what you were trying to say, right? Like,
exactly.
Yeah, like it's gonna tweak the numbers of the win rate. There's gonna be some edge cases in games where it's like, fuck, if I was able to hide the camp in the bush, you know, this would have changed the outcome and could have changed the outcome of the game. But yeah, in terms of like Ivern being like fair, being a fair champion right now, I don't know. I think he's still got a ways to go, and you'll probably see soon he'll get nerfed again in no time. Karthus. This is a, what is this? Q casting made more fluid. Lay waste can now be buffered. Cast input as lay waste explodes will now automatically fire once lay waste comes off of cooldown, unless Karthus cancels the command. So this is just a quality of life change for people with a higher latency. Not much to say here unless there's something I'm missing. What do you think, Brandon?
Yeah, it sounds like that.
Yeah,
like
okay.
Just quality of life change.
Yeah, just some, you know, if you're playing on dial-up and you got that fucking shit going on still, you could play Karthus, and I think they did that with Ryze recently as well, a while back. Lissandra, Q damage scaling up, passive cooldown at later levels. Let's see. This is a cooldown at all ranks, so she's getting a little bit more mana late game in extended fights and extended pushes, and she's getting a little bit more AP from her Q. A very just a very small buff, 0.65 to 0.7. This could be the difference in whether or not she can one-shot caster creeps, which we've talked about before. Is kind of significant when you're talking about champions that want to push roam or push flank and shit like that. But my initial read on this, still strong solo queue champ. Anytime I see Lissandra, I feel like it's a underrated champion. Does this really do anything that huge? No, I don't think so. Maybe ultra late game, but other than that, I don't see the lane phase being too impacted by this or anything like that. Brandon, you have any thoughts here, dude?
Yeah, so basically, when you think about mid lane and mana management, typically the most important levels are going to be levels 1 to 5, and then levels like around 6 to 11, I guess. But I would say in the current meta with how fast the laning phase ends, is probably more like 6 to 9. The reason for this is that obviously levels 1 to 5 is when you're just sitting on a Dorn's Ring, and it gives you more versatility if you have more mana. And more importantly, at levels 6 to 9 is when you want to push into making roams happen while the laning phase is still in effect. So if we actually look at these changes here, she doesn't get any mana at levels 1 to 5, so that doesn't affect her early lane phase at all. And then she gets a 3-second cooldown reduction on her passive for level 6 to 11, which is very, very minor and shouldn't actually do anything. And with her build, she's always going to build like Roa or a variation of Roa, like the GLP or something like that, which is going to give her a massive mana pool anyways once that starts taking away. So I feel like these changes do absolutely nothing.
Yeah, you think they're pretty minor?
Yes.
All right, cool. Yeah, I can definitely see that. Yeah, there's definitely not much here on Lissandra. She's pretty much the same champ. This slight AP change is really small. And honestly, this seems to come from. I think Riot Games is still looking at some more significant changes on Lissandra, but I feel like they're just doing like a placeholder change to just be like, yeah, we changed something, because they don't like the way. I know for a fact that Riot doesn't like how her passive works, and they're looking to do something different. So I don't see much difference there either with Lissandra. Malzahar, armor is down, Voidling health is down, Voidling gold rewards is down. Malzahar's weird, and I'm kind of lost on visibility on this champion, and I think I say it that way is because I kind of had an understanding of why he was broken when I was in Korea. He was like constantly played in support, and he was just like auto winning every lane. He got nerfed a little bit, and you haven't seen much of him recently, and now he's being nerfed again. I feel like Riot doesn't know what to do with Malzahar, and at this point they're pretty much Aziring / Olafing him to the point of where he's just not going to be played unless you're a Malzahar fucking one-trick support Malzahar, because he's not even going to be that good in mid now with this change. I'm sure he has a spot in some competitive like team comps, but as a solo queue pick, I don't know if I like this champ as much now. What do you think, Brandon? Is this too much?
Yeah, this nerf is huge, specifically the Voidling health, obviously.
Yeah.
But changing it from 3 to 2 is a massive nerf. And I think that Malzahar is pretty much going to be probably like, mid-tier to low-tier now, just from this change.
Yeah, I feel like they did this thing where they were already sending him out. It's like the revolving door at the airport, And now that, like, as you're getting out of the airport, the door's like, get the fuck out of here, and it just like kicks his ass out, dude. And a boot comes from fucking United Airlines, just a random United Airlines boot, just boots him out. I don't know. I think he'll still show up sometimes, but this is painful. This is painful if you're a Malzahar fan. That's a pretty rough one. You can tell that Riot doesn't know what the fuck they're doing with Malzahar right now, and they don't know. They wanted him to be a mid. They didn't want him to be a support, and then he starts being a support, and now they're nerfing support, so now he can't be that good at mid. I don't really know what their plan is with him, and I'm sure they're very confused at this point too. I wish they would just bring old Malzahar back at this point. Nautilus, mana regen growth stat is down. The E Riptide cost is up. So this is more of a top lane focused nerf. Essentially what's been happening is Nautilus is just one of those staple tops that you can play. You can be like my homie from a previous session. What was it, Big Lenny? You get stuffed in the top lane. You just play Nautilus, buy double Dords and a corrupting pot, and then you can look like a professional top laner by just jamming the wave under turret. Me personally, I feel like. Oh, thank you, Haji, for the $10. Appreciate it, buddy. Me personally, I think that Nautilus is.
To say congrats on the 1K the other day.
Oh, thank you. So yeah, sorry, I have like a fucking text to speech going. I should probably turn that shit off when I'm recording a video. Mana regen growth is down, and then the mana cost is up. So with Nautilus, basically as a top laner, he's already been kind of strong as a top laner in competitive and in solo queue. He's very easy to execute and he's very effective. This change is going to make his laning phase a little bit weaker earlier on when it matters the most. And it's gonna put Nautilus in a position where there's some counterplay. That said, thanks Sharp for the 8 months. That said, do I think that this kicks Nautilus out of the top lane by any means? No, sir, because most guys go, like I said, double Doran's corrupting pot anyways. However, this is a bit of a way for Riot to address the fact that he kind of can just spam E, and if he's not doing it effectively, as in running into the minions, trying to E champions and push the wave, shit like that, it's going to add up a lot faster in the early levels and will allow top laners that are able to wiggle out of that. I know that matchup is pretty much you just try to bait him to E and then wiggle out of the AoE while it's like expanding. And if you do that a couple times, then you can accumulate a lead and then you can finally go on the offensive with these 2 nerfs. That's my read on it. It makes the lane phase a little bit more bearable. Other than that, if he gets through lane phase, he's still going to be Nautilus. Any thoughts, Brandon?
Yeah, I completely agree just with everything you said pretty much.
All right, word up, Ryze. Let's see. Much like Karthus, cooldown reset now occurs with Rune Prison or Spell Flux or Cast rather than when they hit their targets. I don't really play Ryze, dude. It's been a while since I've played Ryze. Do you have any comments on this?
No, it's just a quality of life improvement.
So it's very similar to the Karthus. This was the same thing. I thought I thought it was in a previous patch, but I guess it is this patch that they did it. I saw people talking about it. Cool. Shen. Shen is one of those champions who always performs considerably better in organized play. So Riot is nerfing Shen because of competitive, essentially. That's another reason to hate pro players, because I'm here to tell you, I don't think Shen is that good in solo queue. This is a perfect example of Riot looking at the pro scene and going, Shen's too good. We don't like Shen being that good in the pro scene. So right now we have empowered attack bonus damage is down. Against non-champions, it's down. And deals double damage to monsters, still has a cap. E Shadow Dash is wider. Stand United cooldown is up. Shield is down. Scaling up to based on allies' current health. So if they have lower health, use it. I feel like this is just going to make Shen even that much weaker in solo queue. And this is just, like I said at the start of this is kind of an unfortunate case of where competitive play kind of ruins a champion's viability across the board for the rest of the player base. Shen is one of those champions that you have to understand how to manage waves. You have to understand how to manage lane. You have to understand how to engage well. But in a solo queue environment, you really don't have any business picking Shen, because in order for Shen to really work, you got to have somebody on your team that can get value out of those good clutch ults that you make and those good setups that you create. A fed Shen isn't going to 1v9 a game. So, in my opinion, this just sucks for the people that aren't pros, the people that aren't ultra high elo. Your thoughts, Brandon?
Yeah, I like the changes. It's unfortunate that like they're nerfs to solo queue Shen, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
But I actually get kind of like the change they did to the shield, where basically it scales. It's not really a buff, but obviously it's kind of just a nerf. But I like how is now the shield that someone gets scales off of their missing health, because then that basically means if you're ulting someone full HP and trying to make a play, they shouldn't have as much shield. So just as far as game design is concerned, I actually don't mind these nerfs that much. But
okay,
like you said, in terms of viability in solo queue, we already don't see Shen enough. He's not going to 1v9, etc., etc. So
yeah,
I think that this is just
it's
unfortunate.
just unlucky.
If you're a Shen player.
Yeah, it's unlucky for solo queue players in general, I think. Udyr, dude. This is I honestly have no tracking on Udyr whatsoever as a player, as a content creator. I have no clue, because I like never play him, and I never even see him in high elo games anymore, and I haven't for forever. I haven't seen this fucking guy. Q and W now have effects every 3 hits, ability mana cost adjusted. Udyr players currently feel pretty pinned into playing Phoenix Udyr or Tiger Udyr, while skipping out entirely on the other ones till the end of the game. We'd like to ensure that using all of Udyr's abilities is at least an option. Ability cost 50 to 33 mana levels 1 through 18. Tiger stance remove attack Remove bonus attack damage. New repeated maulings. Udyr's first and third basic attacks after that while in Tiger Strike stance or Tiger Strikes, applying the stance's damage over time effect. Tiger Strikes damage is down a bit, but you're also getting more damage over time. So this is still definitely a buff. Go for the throat. Successive Tiger Strikes against the same target will instantly deal all remaining damage of the pre. Oh yeah, okay. So yeah, that's pretty significant Udyr buff to Tiger Stance for sure. Turtle Stance. Remove lifesteal. No longer gains lifesteal. Slow and steady Udyr's first and every third attack while in Turtle Stance. Heal him for 2.5 maximum health, increasing up to 5% based on Udyr's missing health. I have no idea, Brandon. I have no clue on this. I have no playtest experience on Udyr. I have no idea how good or bad this makes Udyr. In terms of solo queue, I imagine he'll never be played competitive anytime soon, but maybe I'm completely out of line in saying that. What do you think? Do you have anything on this?
Sure. So for his Q stance, one thing I noticed immediately was that they removed it so that basically his basic attacks don't do the 50% of his total attack damage, and then they just instead make it so now he has a base amount of damage that he's going to apply, which somewhat scales off attack speed, since it will do the remaining portion of the damage if you had reapplied it on the third auto attack, right? But when I really looked at it more, I was like, you know what? They're also at the same time removing his lifesteal from Turtle Stance. They're removing that 80 ratio on his Q. It sounds like they're trying to give him a little bit more kind of base stats, so that he can build a little bit tankier and then just rely on the sort of base values of his abilities, right? Rather than having to build damage or something like that.
That makes sense, sure.
But at the same time, I don't think that it really has anything to, like, I don't think no item is like tanky and has attack speed, like, you know what I mean, besides like Triforce or something like that.
That's exactly the only item that while you were saying that, the only item I was thinking that would look really good on Udyr after reading this would be Triforce, right? Like, I feel like Triforce, and I guess that's what he does, is he just runs around the map and splits. So this could technically be a buff to that playstyle, in all honesty. But in terms of like its actual viability, I can't make a read on this. Yeah, go ahead.
Basically, like, even if you're split pushing or you're jungling or anything like that, Tiger Stance is not going to be the stance that you want to go anyways, because you're going to want the wave clear of the Phoenix stance, right? Even if you're split pushing or anything like that, really. Sure, you might put 1 point in Tiger Stance, and it'll help you in dueling, but typically you put 1 point in Tiger Stance like later on. Some Udyr mains will do it like once they've already gotten their other skill points out of the way. Sometimes they'll do it after they've maxed their main damage ability and they put 1 point in everything else, and then just sink one in their alternate stance, whether it's Tiger or Phoenix. But long story short, to me, reading on this, it looks like Tiger Stance just has more base damage. Turtle Stance, now all of a sudden it's overall he's going to scale less if you did a more damage centered build, but if you're a little bit tankier, overall it's just kind of a buff to him. And it's not a buff overall, it's just a buff to specifically that Tiger Stance. But Phoenix Stance is overall considered like his main stance that he's using to clear and do a lot of stuff. Sure, in the top lane you can run the Tiger Stance and cheese a lot of people. Back in the day they had that like red pot Tiger Stance.
Yeah, I remember that shit. Yeah.
Where he would like two-shot you or something like that. Maybe some cheese like that will come back, but
some Flash Ignite Fervor shit could show up, I guess.
Yeah, basically there's just not enough changes that occurred to really have any significant effect, but it is definitely a minor buff to him in his current sort of iteration.
All right, cool. Howling Abyss, I do not care. That's not what my channel's about. Twisted Treeline, still don't care. Sorry, Twisted Treeline fans. Masteries, Storm Raider Surge. You'll have a sound when it activates. That's kind of cool. Jungle, Krugs. Mini Krugs now leash back to their nook, not to the place they fell when their parent died, okay? Rift Scuttler, clarity around who killed Rift Scuttler. Rift Scuttler now submerges a bit more slowly, allowing the visual effects, things that killed her, to play. Cool. Ward Def Audio, now play the coin sound when killed. Rotating game modes, lead client update. Is that it? Is that everything?
Yep.
All right. All right, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Kind of a short patch. I know that, and Brandon and I talked about this going into this, I know that Riot's talking about mid-season update. Trust me, on this channel we will go over everything in what will likely be a 3-hour long, just brutal slugfest of a video. But for now, this is the 7.8 patch notes. If you guys enjoyed this, you want to see more like it, like, subscribe, etc., etc. I love you guys, and I'm out. Peace. Cracks, thanks so much.